Well, hi again, folks, and welcome into UnAnchored Boston. Here we are. The calendar is turned. We are now in the month of October. And as always, we are brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping and where? We're in New Hampshire, of course. And by the big wheel himself, the great George Gray of George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. I was there Friday for an oil change and a tire rotation, and they did a great, great job. All right, we've got a special guest back, a good friend of ours, good friend of everybody's. Prior to Don Bosco, let's see if we get them all right. Don Bosco, Boston College, Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, New York Jets, New England Patriots, and the father of a Super Bowl winner. Steve won a Super Bowl himself with the Giants, and the father of a Super Bowl champion, Zach Deossie, who I saw play in high school and saw him play in college and saw him play in the National Football League. The only father-son combo to win a Super Bowl with the same teams. You know that, Bob Lobel?
I did know that, and I think that was a remarkable thing. It's always every time you come across a statistic like that, you say, "Whoa!" I know those guys. That's fantastic. So it's pretty unusual, but it's a great tribute to
There's a
Steve and Zach and everything that happened. The, all the nicknames: Barney Rebel, Beach Ball, whatever the nicknames Steve had. Look, he had.
there was a threat to that elite club that my son and I have because the McCaffreys had an opportunity last year. So
Right.
with Christian and Ed, and I know as I played with his father Ed, so I was prepared to give him a yell had they won it, just to welcome him to the most elite club in the NFL. So.
Or you could be like the late Mercury Morris, who didn't want anybody else to be in the undefeated club, and you could just say, put the hex on anybody that it's just you and Zach are the only ones that have it.
That's right.
Steve's a perfect guest, as Lynchy and I talked about last week. That first of all, on the question of where does Belichick go, to the Giants or does he go to the Dallas Cowboys? And Deossie would know because he's played for both, and he knows the organizations. And then, of course, there's the Boston College thing, which really stands up front and center. The revitalization of the BC Eagles and how dramatically they've become, again, part of the sports scene in Boston. Thanks to Bill O'Brien and everything else, but they've had a remarkable start to this season, and I guess it all started at Florida State, but one loss in Missouri. Missouri's ranked number 9th in both polls. They lose by 7 points to a top-ranked team, and they're having a great year. They're real, and it's not over yet.
That's very true, and I tell you, I'm in touch with dozens of my former teammates at BC, and we've talked for years about what's going to get BC over the hump. We're not going to compete for national championship, but we can compete for a good bowl game and maybe a better bowl game, and maybe an outside chance at the playoffs. Now that it's 12 games, but it's because we all were together at the red. A bunch of guys were at the red bandana game, and the subject came up. What's different? And you look at it, and it's a more disciplined team, and it's not a team that. We knew when we were at BC that we didn't have the athletes that Clemson or Alabama or Penn State had, but we knew we could be smarter and tougher and hit harder and not make the mistakes that cost you games. You look at that first game they played against Florida State, I think they had one penalty the whole game, and that was on special teams. That's unbelievable in college football. So I love what's going on over there, and it's great to see them competing as hard as they are, and who knows where it takes them this year, but it'd be nice to get a bowl game. Maybe somewhere south where I can go golf and see the game.
You have to set the all-time record for most rounds played and most courses played, even more than Lobel when Lobel was in his heyday.
It's my son is he's making a huge dent in that, but he goes and plays down in Augusta with the Manning brothers, and every time he goes down there, I get a shirt or a hat or something, and it's not because he's taking care of his dad. It's because he's reminding me that I'll never play Augusta, and he plays it all the time. So every time I have to put on that hat or that shirt, I'm like, oh, that rotten son of mine. He reminds me any chance he gets that I'm never going to play there. So, but yeah, I just love it now, and I love retirement. And the problem is, as you guys probably know, you slow down a little bit. You just there's a lot of things going on between grandchildren and back pain and commitments here and there. I feel like I'm running around more now that I'm somewhat retired from the TV and radio stuff and a few other things. But it's great. Time with the grandchildren and time with good friends, and I still sneak out and get as much golf in as I can.
Well, you're a member of that club as well. So there's a lot of clubs you're going to be joining in the next 10 years. I hate to tell you that, Steve.
I get it. It was, but 5 years ago it was creeping up on me. Now it's pushing me out of the way and taking over. So it's all good though. It's all good.
I remember our meeting in the place called the Dollhouse.
Here we go.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Don't recall.
Okay. That must have been somebody else. I'm sorry.
I never heard of Mons Venus. Never heard of the. Never heard of those.
Yeah.
It was Mons. That was a restaurant that we went to. Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
It was Alan Miller. It wasn't us. It was Alan Miller.
That's right. That's exactly right. We were getting him out of there.
We'll never forget that moment. I'll tell you that. But that's every time I talk to Steve or see Steve, I think of Parcells.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I just think they're so connected. Those guys. You do agree, Steve, that you and Parcells were like kindred spirits?
Well, I absolutely believe that, but I don't know, Bob. I told Lynch, I might have mentioned it to you one time, but when I was down in Dallas for 5 years, after the last 4 years, I used to go out in the field, and way before you had this stretch, you only go out there as a team an hour before the game, but I'd go out there 2 hours before the game, throw the football around, drop kick, do whatever, and every time we played the Giants, Parcells, whether it was in New York or whether it was in Dallas, Parcells would find his way near me, or I'd find my way near him, and he was telling me for 4 years, he goes, "Hey, they don't know what they're doing with you down here. I'll get you out of here the minute you become available for a trade. I'm gonna grab you." Back then, there weren't a lot of trades. It was all, you didn't even have free agency. So, and then when Jimmy Johnson came in and decided he was going in a different direction with the linebackers, Parcells, true to his word, grabbed me as quickly as he could and gave me an opportunity to win a starting job on the best linebacking crew in the league, with Pepper Johnson and Carl Banks and Lawrence Taylor. But for a coach to be a man of his word, and all you want as a player is, you don't want your coach to lie to you. You want a coach that's straightforward, even if it's hard news. You'd much rather have the hard news than you would a soft lie. So I think that relationship was fostered before he even got to the New York Giants. And then when I got to the Giants, I think my one job was linebacker, one job was long snapping, and the other one was a straight man to Bill Parcells, so I could feed him the straight line and he'd come up with the punchline and make it all over the TV. So it was just a wonderful scenario. And I agree with you that I look at football the way he does, as a fun, tough, hard-nosed game there's a lot of ways to win games, and he's discovered many of them.
How then? And I maybe you don't want to get into this or back off from this, but in comparing Belichick to Parcells, it's like apples and oranges. It's like salt and pepper. It's like they coached together, and we know that and it was on his staff and all the relationships, but it never seemed to be a great relationship, and it always seemed to get worse what the hell happened, and was it just personalities? Was it style?
It was 100% personalities. But when I got to the Giants, I was amazed at how much personality there was on the team. Not just coaches, but players, and even their trainers were wise asses sometimes. In Dallas, I played Tom Landry's last 5 years, and everything was sort of buckled down. And not that Tom Landry he had a dry sense of humor, and he wasn't he wasn't a hard ass, but things were more buckled down than they were in New York. In New York, I remember the first pad practice we had at training camp. I'm watching coaches yelling at other coaches, players yelling at coaches yelling at players, but with no hard feelings whatsoever, because there was an underlying current of desire to get better and to win a championship. and they would, if as long as you could back up what you were saying, there was no problem. Having a little tete-a-tete with a coach. There was no problem with coaches going after each other. I think there was a bit of a, not a Wild West scenario, but I think it was, you had Tom Coughlin on that team too. You had a bunch of outstanding Hall of Fame level coaches that all wanted the same thing and desperately wanted the same thing. They wanted championships. That's all that mattered. And I couldn't believe how much it mattered to the guys in New York, the guys on the Giants, compared to what I went through in Dallas. Dallas was a franchise in decline at that point, and it was just an odd situation where guys were thinking about all sorts of things except winning championships. But Parcells and Belichick have a lot in common, but they also had, I think the way they delivered the message was different. I think that's the biggest difference between the both of them, because both of them are brilliant football guys. Bill Belichick, X's and O's, might have a quicker grasp or quicker recall of scenarios. But if you need a coach if you had 45 guys on the team and you needed 45 different ways to motivate them, Bill Parcells could find that out. That was never an issue. He knew exactly how to flip your switch and get things going. But I think that they both desperately wanted to be the best possible teams that they could be, and they surrounded themselves with people that thought the same way. So yeah, they had their times where things were tense and things were a little, especially with the whole the escapade with the Jets and whatnot. That there was a lot going on there, but the impression I get from having talked to both of them over the course of years is that they have just a tremendous amount of respect for each other, and they both seem to realize that, similar to the Brady Belichick thing, they were great for each other. Bill Belichick was great for Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells was great for Bill Belichick. It was one of those meetings of greatness that worked out in a phenomenal fashion.
We all know Parcells. He can be an intimidating guy, and but even to an assistant coach. But
Yep.
Belichick wasn't afraid of him. Belichick would get right back in his face every time he said something he thought he'd disagree with. Right?
100%. It wasn't even a question, and that was the culture at the Giants. If you were a player, now, granted, I'm sitting there next to some of the great linebackers in the NFL, and I'm not going to say a word, but I saw a lot of these guys saying. And then eventually, when I was there for a little while, I felt better that I could express my opinion. But it wasn't an intimidation factor with Belichick and Parcells. It was if you're coming here to say something and talk about football, you better bring it. You better be 100% prepared to plead your case and to make a point. And I saw it any number of times where Belichick or Parcells could be persuaded by a guy on the defense, whatever. I remember asking Bill Belichick one time, he first coach I ever had that asked my opinion on something. And I thought it was a trick question because I never had a coach ask my opinion. And I gave some answer like, yeah, coach, what do you want? He goes, no, Steve, I didn't ask you to do something. I asked you what you thought of something. And you got to be honest with me and tell me what you think. If I'm asking you to do something and you're not comfortable with it, you got to let me know. Years later, I asked him about that because I'd never experienced that with a coach. And he said, look, Steve, I could watch Lawrence Taylor, the greatest defensive player I've ever been around. I could watch 1,000,000 hours of film on him, and I still might not understand everything that he sees or why he does certain things. He looks at opportunities to discuss football with his players for a chance to learn. Bill Belichick's a teacher at heart, but he also understands that there's ways that he could learn from the guys on the field, and he uses that as a mining expedition for knowledge of the game. Bill Belichick always wanted to learn more about the game. Bill Parcells wanted to learn more about people. He wanted to learn more about what angles he could do to find a way to win games. And both of them are in the elite of NFL coaches.
That's a fantastic observation and answer, and it makes so much more sense. So where's Belichick going to end up, Steve? Where do you think? Jerry Jones, considering the Maris, considering everything in these two franchises that have their own egocentric feelings about themselves.
Yeah.
Where do you think Belichick might go? Maybe
But
not.
the Dallas thing, I think the thing that's been keeping Dallas back since that run in the early '90s was Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones would be better served to turn the football operations over to somebody who is less intense on being part of the equation. Jerry Jones should be just kick back and relax and enjoy his team. One of the best money making franchises in sports. I'm not sure that that's a position for Belichick, because now, you're running into a situation. You got Jerry Jones and his son very involved. It's a situation he's been in for. I'm not saying anything or anywhere, but it's a situation he's.
Well, we might guess. Yeah, we might figure that out.
Yeah. So, but you can even throw Philadelphia into the mix if they don't turn things around. That could be a scenario that would be inviting to Bill Belichick. The other part of that equation is if he wants to get back, and the problem he has right now is that the current trend in the NFL for head coaches is that young, aggressive offensive coordinator who's had some success with a quarterback. And that's because the game's is an offensive scenario right now. But when you look at the best coaches over the last 15 years, it's been Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. So what the general manager that can think outside the box. The current box right now is get that offensive coordinator that can light it up and make it interesting for the fans. But you got to have a coach that's covering all sorts of the things. You saw feels like there's a little bit of a switch going on right now. They're not scoring points like they did last year. It seems like teams have figured out a little bit of this wide open offense and how to defend against that offense. So it's one of those things where Bill Belichick, I think he could have a spot in the league, but the Giants would be. I mean, that's another thing that carries a little baggage with it too. The incredible success that Bill Parcells had there, the odds of Bill Belichick recreating that are, better than most coaches, but still a difficult call. There's going to be a few situations open up. I wonder how comfortable he's getting in the media. I wonder how comfortable he's getting with the grandchildren. I wonder how comfortable he's getting just not showing up at 5 a.m. and staying till midnight. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. Maybe I can't picture Bill Belichick not wanting to coach. It makes no sense to me, or to teach or coach. It makes no sense to me that he's not doing it right now, because he is the best I've ever seen at it.
What about the Shula thing?
What's that?
What about the Shula thing with him as well? The record.
Yeah, I think that would mean something to him. But I think the championships probably mean more to him than anything else. Bill, as you guys have talked to Bill any number of times, he's an incredible historian of the game. I haven't come across very many people that know the history of the NFL like he does. So you're right, Bob. I think that would mean something to him. But I think if he were to retire without it, that would be something that he'd maybe have a little bit of regret for. But he can't look back on his career as a head coach and think that it was anything but the best that's been so far.
He's going to be next football season. He's going to be 73 years old. Is that going to scare away some owners from bringing in a 73-year-old guy that's probably looking at a 2 to 3 year turnaround for his team?
Yeah, it definitely would, and it's more with most of the franchises. It's more the general manager that you'll have the issue with, and a lot of owners are confident in their general managers, and they'll work with that. But then again, what general manager wants to bring in Belichick, understanding that Bill Belichick wants to be more than just the head coach? He wants to have a say in the general managership. I don't think he has to be officially a general manager, but he still wants to have the influence. And if you're a smart general manager, why wouldn't you go to Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, and by pure Super Bowls won, you could hang the general manager tag on that too. If you're a smart general manager, especially a young guy, why wouldn't you try to sit there with Belichick and figure things out? I think it would be an incredible scenario for anyone, owners, coaches, players, to have someone like Bill Belichick come to the table and step up. But again, I'm talking from an old school standpoint. You talk to some guys now in the league, and it's like they don't mind a coach being a buddy of theirs, or they don't mind, a younger coach trying to talk the same language they're talking or whatever. I don't know, but it's in terms of the width and breadth of football knowledge and personnel knowledge, who's better than Bill Belichick? Hard to say. Nobody, as far as I'm concerned.
I watching him doing all this media stuff. Those of us, we all know him pretty well. I'm not the least bit surprised. But other people come up to him and said, "Oh my God, I never knew Belichick had a personality. I never knew he had a sense of humor. I never knew he had this and that." I said, "Yeah, he's great. When I used to do the show with him, and before that red light went on, we'd have me in stitches." And when he was a funny guy, but then he had to put that once the red light went on, he had to put that facade on. But he's really, really good at what he does. I mean, and we all think we've heard it all, watched it all. I'm still learning things from him. Still learning things from him.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the current NFL. It's about how the trends have evolved over the years, or even come back over the years. He recognizes not just the what's going on in that field. He recognizes how the whole NFL comes together as one, and he recognizes trends quicker than anybody else. He recognizes he has a incredible amount of information that if he sees something, he can relate it back to something that happened previously in the NFL. And if you understand that, maybe you can understand how to deal with that, if it's a problem or a benefit. There's for whatever it is, and I'm sure a big part of it, Bill Belichick will attribute to his dad. His dad, he was a incredible historian of the game too, and he just grew up as a football guy and loved it. And we asked him on the radio one time, because after that incredible amount of success, you even have to find things to talk about, even though how many times can you say, "Hey, great game, coach"? It's so we asked him one time, if coaching never happened for you, what was going to be your line of work? He didn't even blink. He goes, "I'd be a teacher." And as soon as he said it, I'm like, well, yeah, you're a teacher right now. That makes sense. He loves the game. I can't imagine someone that in love with football not wanting to come back. But again, he's still talking football, and he looks like he's having fun doing it.
Yep. Yeah, he's good. He's good on the Manning cast. He's good inside the NFL. He's good on. He actually did a commercial where he was skimming stuff out of his pool. I mean, he's good. Yeah. I mean, he's really good at it.
Yeah, and it's an unassuming humor too. It's kind of sometimes deadpan, sometimes dry, and sometimes even making fun of himself, which is it's a good way to present it.
I have a question to ask both of you guys, and it's about Hall of Fame with the passing of Pete Rose this weekend. And the question is, what do you think about the Hall of Fame concept, whether it's in baseball or football, or Robert Kraft's overwhelming desire to get into the Hall of Fame, and whether he should be in, whether I'm not talking about the Patriots Hall of Fame. That's a whole nother story. As we talked about that. I mean, that's the Robert Kraft Hall of Fame. It's not the Patriots Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, Lynch, but I know you're on the selection committee, but that's just the way. Do you think Pete Rose should have been in the Hall of Fame, or should he get in posthumously? Or do you think that Kraft should be in their Hall of Fame? We just make too much of the whole Hall of Fame thing.
Well, I'll go with the Bob Kraft thing first. Without a doubt, the criteria that has been set by the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there is absolutely no doubt that Bob Kraft belongs in it. And I say that for one reason. Jerry Jones is in. Jerry Jones is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, you're talking about 3 championships. You're talking about 3 championships in more time then Bob Kraft has the 6 championships. You're talking about 10 Super Bowl appearances. It's if you're, but Jerry Jones, I don't know, does the America's team thing, does that get you into the Hall of Fame quicker? And I'm not using my criteria. I'm using the Pro Football Hall of Fame criteria. If Jerry Jones is in the Hall of Fame, then why is Bob Kraft not in there? And I'll tell you something else. Talking to people that were involved a lot with the CBA negotiations and whatnot, and the collective bargaining agreement and whatnot, Bob Kraft, Jerry Jones, a couple other owners in there, a lot of lawyers around. I've been told by people who were in the meeting that Bob Kraft was the biggest factor in getting that job, getting the brand new collective bargaining agreement done. It was like 3 years ago, and to the point where there was, it wasn't one of those things where he was trying to enforce his will. He was trying to work things out. He kept that. There was talk of all sorts of a strike or this or whatever. Bob Kraft was that guy in the room, and it was just a matter of if you forget about that, forget about his contributions to the collective bargaining agreement. Talk about the team. Talk about that team. Tell me a better team in the history of the NFL. Why isn't the owner in the Hall of Fame? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Pete Rose, I understand. I've read a lot about this very recently, and heard a lot about things on TV, and there's a lot of baseball guys that are like, hey, it is what it is. This is the Hall of Fame. Those are the rules, and that's the way it is. Not just former players, but guys that reporters and the thing. It's I understand it. I get it. And somebody kind of waffled on it and said, well, he is in the Hall of Fame, or his records are in the Hall of Fame. It's not like they don't print up the record in the Hall of Fame of 4,300, whatever it does, hits. His records are in there. He's not in there. You understood the rules. I get it. I think there'll be a move to put him in there posthumously, but I can understand why they look at it this way. I can understand why they don't want to. Those are the rules. That's the way they've been. They were the rules when he was playing, when he was managing. They've been the rules for a long time, and the greatness doesn't preclude being a person who works within the organization at all. I'd say.
The thing that bothers me about Robert Kraft is the campaign that he is mounting behind the scenes to get himself in.
Yep.
I mean, you should just play, coach, own, and then let your record or your accomplishment speak for themselves, rather than hiring somebody or using one of your employees to be an advocate for you. And that's what bothers me about it.
Oh, agreed. But I agree with you 100%. There's something, I don't know, not unseemly, but there's something odd about campaigning for something like that. If you have to campaign, that means you're probably borderline. He's not borderline. I understand he might be frustrated. I understand that he would think that because Bob Kraft's not he's not a guy that's waiting for things to happen. His entire life he's made things happen. So maybe that's just a force of habit for him. I don't like that idea at all. But I also I don't understand what the Pro Football Hall of Fame is waiting for. I have no idea whatsoever, and I could see how you get frustrated seeing owners with lesser qualifications get in there well before him. It made no sense whatsoever.
What do you think about Rose, Lynchy?
He bet on his own team and against his own team, and I think that if you bet on other sports, I don't have a problem with that, because gambling is everywhere now. But betting on your own team and against your own team, I think is unpardonable. No,
I wonder if, like you said, you mentioned the gambling's everywhere now. It used to be that teams wouldn't even allow you a casino to advertise in a stadium. Now they're the lead advertisers in the.
Unbelievable! It's unbelievable.
Yep, they're the lead advertisers in the business, and it's one of those things where you look at it, and I'm wondering if because of that might lend to him getting in posthumously. I'm not sure, but I'd like to see it anyway.
Well, somebody could make the argument that, look around. Gambling is legally everywhere, and it's sought after now. Instead of prevented, it's being courted.
It's a huge resource for the NFL. It's a huge, and same thing with baseball and basketball. Gambling is a huge moneymaker for the professional sports leagues.
And how long have they been doing it in Europe on soccer, or on their football and horse racing? I mean, they've been used to it for almost a century ahead of.
Yeah, they've had a few scandals over. They've had a few betting scandals over there too, but they tend to work it out. However, but listen, rules are the rules. I get it, but I wouldn't mind seeing a posthumous election into the Hall of Fame. I don't know, maybe just because I loved watching them play when I was a kid, and I just thought.
We didn't see that big. So what about Clemens, and what about these other guys? The performance enhancing drugs or whatever.
Yep.
I'm just saying it opens up a whole.
They knew that was wrong too. I remember I knew nothing about steroids until I got to college and seeing some teammates that did it, and at first I was like, I wish I could do that, but I was already 25 pounds bigger than most linebackers in the country. I would have to go play offensive line. But at my first thought was like, well, that's not fair. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. If you did steroids and you got yourself a college scholarship and you're okay with that, that's fine. I'm not gonna. And then I saw it in the NFL. I saw guys because there wasn't testing until about 1990 in the NFL. And I saw guys that were roided out and it didn't really bother me. I was like, that doesn't bother me, not because of the ethical scenario of it, but the idea that, okay, bring it. You're artificial, and that, in my head, that gave me an edge. You can't have the confidence knowing that your ability to be in the NFL comes from a needle in the butt. I mean, it's one of those things. But again, when baseball, everybody talks about the home run hitters and some pitchers here and there. There were a number of guys on steroids. I get it. I understand it. But are you gonna go find some other reasons to? There's going to be technology will always stay ahead of the curve, because they will find ways to enhance their abilities one way or the other that are less detectable than before, and maybe not even illegal. But the fact is, it was illegal in that situation, and I understand it. But you're also competing against a good number of guys that were doing the same thing.
Lawrence Taylor, the best natural athlete that you've ever played with or against?
Other than the two of us.
Well, we'll talk about golf, but Lawrence is not only the best football player I've ever been around, one of the best teammates you could have. I know he had his issues. I know, but I do know that when I was there, he wasn't doing the drugs that I was there, because I also got caught smoking weed. So we were doing getting P tested by the P man. That's his name, was P man, twice a week, even not even in the off season. So I knew, and he was still drinking, as was I, to a point, and so I know he wasn't doing that then. But when it came to a guy that wanted, first off, to win and win and win, and it didn't matter if it was the game or the individual battle that he was in with that tackle or whatever it was, he wanted to win. The other part of that was that he would do anything he could to help out a teammate. There was nothing that he would dismiss if he saw a teammate that was struggling, that needed some help, that needed some advice, that needed a little coaching, that needed something. He was as dedicated to winning as Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, and he had an infectious attitude. And when you stepped onto that field, when I finally got the starting job there only because Harry Carson retired, Bill Belichick tells me I'm the signal caller, and I'm like, oh great, I'm calling the huddle. Trust me and everything. So happened to be mentioning it to Lawrence at lunch. He goes, "Yeah, Bill must trust me. Pepper was there and Carl Banks was there. Bill must trust me. He wants me to call that huddle." He goes, and Lawrence looks at Pepper and back to me and over to Carl, back to me. Lawrence says, "You do know that none of us wanted to do it, right?" Yeah, of course I did. Obviously, get out of town, whatever. But he helped me. There were a couple times I was so in the huddle. I was just like livid and angry and something happened that I was just ready to. I just wanted to punch somebody in the face. And that's back when they had the hand signals for the we didn't have the ear. And there were a couple times where Lawrence actually put his hand on my shoulder and said, "I got this. 31 safety zone. We're good. Ready? Break." I'm in the huddle, like so angry for whatever reason. I don't know what it was, but he was a remarkable athlete, a remarkable friend. An angry man at times, especially on the field. But I couldn't imagine not having the honor to have played with him and be his friend.
You told us last time, I think, that he was a notorious sleeper during defensive meetings or team meetings.
Yep.
And it was your job at one time to make sure that he was awake or tell him what happened.
When we he had the big conference room, whatever it was, and the big video screens up here, and Lawrence used to like to lay down on the floor in front of the screens right there, and I'd have to lay next to him, and that was it. It was any time I heard like, I'd have to give him the elbow, or if the coach asked him something, I'd have to like, "He wants to know about." But I also think that there was an understanding, and we all know that stars of that caliber, the coaches might try to act like they don't get treated different. They get treated different. I guarantee you that. Well, two reasons. Lawrence probably didn't get asked a lot of questions because he already knew it, and coaches probably didn't want to wake him up. Why would you? Why would you bother? Well, it's the old Jimmy Johnson was the first coach to actually say it out loud. He cut some backup safety special teams player because he kept falling asleep in meetings, and some reporter asked him, "Well, what if Michael Irvin fell asleep in meetings?" He said, "I'd probably get him a pillow." And it was remarkable honesty from a coach, basically stating that all stars get different treatment, and I get it. It is what it is, So, but yeah, Taylor by far the best athlete I've ever played with, and I loved watching him play before I played with him. And
a golfer too, right?
He's pretty good. You can get under his skin though. You can get under his skin a little bit. I tried to play with him down in Florida.
Right.
No, I don't gamble.
No gambling in golf.
I'm not going to gamble with. Listen,
no gambling in golf.
I don't care. He'll even bring it down to my level. We'll bet for $5. He just wants to win. I'm not going to give him that satisfaction of actually taking money out of my pocket. There's no way. I mean, which would most likely happen. But I've been on the course with him when he's had a couple of $high-dollar matches going on. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't seem to faze him whatsoever. So
I'm happy to do this commercial for just a second, Stephen. You probably had this answer, this question from Lynchy the last time, but I need to talk about and want to talk about camping. Campers at Cold Springs RV, if you're ready to see what's new in the 2025 season, they have it. They have next year's models, and they are arriving daily. So go check out the latest in pop-ups and travel trailers and fifth wheels and motorhomes, and make sure you tell them Lobel and Mike Lynch sent you. At Cold Springs RV, the doors are always open, and you can freely browse. So if you want to see the latest in camping, get to Cold Springs RV. That's in the destination for all things camping. Where, New Hampshire is where? It's west of Goffstown. It's north of Tingsboro. We all know about Tingsboro. What a reputation. Or learn more online at coldspringsrv.com. That's coldspringsrv.com. If you have a relationship, maybe perhaps you have your own trailer and it happens to be parked next to someone else who has another trailer, and she looks like she's a pretty good driver. Good luck with the relationship. You can be happy campers. But if you wake up in the morning and she's gone because she was able to drive the camper out, That's one of the beauties of camping. You can, it's like, I wouldn't say hit and run, but it's like, you get choices.
Everyone's happy.
Everybody's happy. Happy campers, you have choices. Right. So those are that's our message. And Mike, take it away.
All right, Beach Ball. Last time we as we know, we don't pay anybody on this show, but when we finally build this Lobel Lynchy cruiser, which is going to be far better than John Madden cruiser ever was, we're going to let you take it cross country for a week. And the deal is you have to pick somebody that you played against or coached against you to ride shotgun with you across the country. It can't be somebody you play with, somebody you played against.
Right.
Who would like to ride shotgun and have a conversation with riding across the country? Who would have
that's real interesting. I think I'd have to pin down some offensive linemen, because that's, I had 3 great linebackers around me. They somehow, I don't know how, they got to the ball before I did, but I was always smashing heads with those offensive linemen. It was like that old Wile E. Coyote with the sheepdog, how they check in and they check in for the day, and then they bash each other and then they check out. And there's plenty of friends around the league that I just had to spend 60 minutes smashing heads with, and afterwards was like, hey, how's the family? Everybody good? You doing? And it's just a weird thing. But I love the premise. That premise sounds great. That's a lot of fun.
So pick one.
I would say probably, let's see. I don't know if he's unavailable in jail, Nate Newton from the Dallas Cowboys, because I played with him and I played against him. And he was a massive man, was a tremendous athlete. And I knew it was just going to be a headache of a day just trying to smash him, for 60 minutes. So that would have been a good one. And then trying to think.
Well, let's assume he's available to travel.
Yep. Yeah. I can always travel down there. Visitation. Right? Oh, that's terrible. I don't know if that's true anymore. I know he was for a little while, but I don't
know. Everybody has their moments.
Didn't he run the wrong way once with a fumble recovery? Was it like Thanksgiving night or something like that against the Dolphins? I think. I'm pretty sure.
You mean Nate Newton? Yeah. No, that was I know who you're talking about. No, it wasn't Nate Newton. It was wasn't it in the Super Bowl?
No, I think it was Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, because Dallas always played on Thanksgiving games.
Yeah,
might have been. Yeah, it might have been. I was thinking that.
You want to drive across country with somebody that can't run the right way?
Listen, I don't know who's driving, but I'll be on my motorcycle right behind it.
Fair enough.
But I would say any of the guys from Philadelphia or Washington, any of the offensive linemen, because that back in that day, that the Washington Redskins had the Hogs. They were huge. Yeah. Dallas had that huge offensive line, and Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman, and Philadelphia had more talent than any of us. They just couldn't get out of their own way. But I remember talking to some of the guys from Philadelphia after we played, and it's funny because they echoed the same sentiment that we had. They said that anytime we lined up against you guys, would have been just as happy if we could have gone out to the parking lot and had a fight, because that's what it turned out to be. It just turned out to be guys just trying to beat the crap out of each other and seeing who's left standing at the end of the day. And it's funny talking to some of the guys after that how it happened, how that became. We said because it wasn't something the coaches taught us. It was more of like a matter of survival. If you came in there and tried to dance around or not be physical, you were going to get rolled up on. And across the board, guys from Washington, guys I've talked to from Philly and Dallas that I played against, and they said the same thing. That NFC East back then, they won like 5 out of 6 Super Bowls during that period, and that's all of them felt the same way. All of them felt the same way. It was like this is going to be just a war of attrition. Let's see who's standing at the end of the day. And and we used to look at AFC teams like a week off almost. It was like you go in there and you beat the crap out of them for the first half, and they won't show up in the second half. Buffalo wasn't like that. It took us 3 quarters to slap them down. But that's how. And then when you knew when you were going to play Philly, that was going to be 60 minutes of a brawl. And if you're going to go play Seattle or even Denver would pick it up a little bit because Elway was tough. But it's just one of those things. And that's my battles in the NFL were all about the offensive linemen, all about it, because they had athletes around me that could make the plays. That was my job. Wasn't to be a playmaker. My job was to set up the playmakers, and that's, to me, the battles with the offensive linemen I had, to me, was a fun and painful part of my career, and I loved it.
Belichick used to say that we were watching film or something, and before the Redskins became the Commanders, you would hear "Hail to the Redskins." He said, "If I hear that damn song one more time in my life, I'm gonna punch somebody right in the nose because I heard it too many damn times when I was coaching against Washington down there."
Oh yeah, there was legit dislike. I'm not gonna say hate, but there's a legit dislike between a lot of these teams, and it was the funniest thing. But remember, we could beat Washington just by showing up. Somehow we'd beat them, and that'd be it. And then somehow Washington would manhandle Philly all the time. So I remember there was one year where we had Washington one week, and then 2 weeks later we had Philly. So we played Washington, slapped them around, and then Washington went to play Philly the next week, and Washington slaps Philly around. Then we go to play Philly the next week, and we're figuring, well, we slapped the Skins around, and the Skins just slapped around Philly. We're going to go in there and slap them around. It happened more than a few times where you just figure, okay, we're playing good football and they're not, and we had trouble beating Philly. We could beat Washington just by showing up. It was the weirdest thing.
Well, we've managed to go 45 minutes without mentioning the Patriots, other than in the Hall of Fame. So it gives you an idea of where this local entry into the AFC East happens to be. There was a headline on one of the columns in the Globe yesterday that they could well be the worst team in the National Football League, which was kind of a shocking thing to see in the headline. You just don't, but literally it's possible that they could be one of the worst, not one of, but the worst team. I just would ask you guys, based upon what you've seen with Miami coming in without Tua, blah, blah, blah. There's so many factors, but I'd be more than happy to take your take on Gerard Mayo and Drake May and the rest of them.
Well, first off, Gerard was a very, very smart player. I loved watching him play because he directed that defense so well, and he was never out of position. He understood the game, not just the plays, but the flow of the game. I really enjoyed watching him play. His coaching experience is limited, but there was good feedback on him immediately happening. But I don't care how good a player you were or how smart a player you were. It's not easy to just come into the NFL and coach, and especially when your team is already searching for some sort of identity that Drake May might or might not bring in the years to come. It's he's got his work cut out for him. Following a legend is never easy, and the Patriots fans around here, you guys know it. There's a whole generation of fans that don't understand how hard it is to maintain that level of excellence. So he's got his work cut out for him. I think that this year is going to be tough. When I saw the schedule, I do the same thing that every ex-player does. They look at the schedule and say, win, win, loss, loss, win, loss, win. And I was very, very generous. I was trying to be exceedingly generous, and I could only see 6 wins. I think that still looks optimistic. Worst team in the league? Yeah, that changes from week to week. I mean, you've got some teams out there that people assume we're going to be better than they are, and maybe that's just some hopeful fans or whatever. But Worst in the league. They're in the bottom 3 or 4 right now. For once, the Globe's not that wrong. So it's, it worked out. It worked out to the point where they are going to. At some point, they're gonna have to throw May in there because he's getting beat up right now. It's one of those things where the quarterback's getting beat up, and it's eventually you're gonna have to throw that rookie in there. Problem is, you've got a terrible offensive line, and I'm not a big believer in the idea that if a guy gets whacked around early in his career, that it's going to be detrimental for the rest of his football career. A lot of people, you hear that all the time. Well, you can't let him get beat up his rookie year; it'll ruin him for life. And if you're a guy that lets that ruin you for life, then not for life, for your career. Then that's your fault. Then you never had the intestinal fortitude to begin with. I don't think that's the case with May. I think he might have to take a beating, but I don't think that's something that's going to decide what his future holds. I still I've been a season ticket holder now for 30 years officially. I don't go to the games, but I do a lot of charity with them. I used to go when my son was playing, and they'd show up at the stadium. But I still like what the Patriots are trying to do. I do believe in the ownership. I think they have a clear idea of what it takes to get the franchise in the right direction. It might take some time. That's the problem. There's not a lot of, how it is up here. You guys know better than anybody how it is up here in Boston. We want what we want, and we want it right now. And that's especially when we've been treated to exactly that for 20 years. I'm just looking at it and saying that they might be the bottom 3 or 4 in the league right now, and I understand. Let's see how it goes next year.
I mean, you always get some wise guy saying, why can't we get players like that? I mean,
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
but let me ask you about this: would Drake May's elusiveness, able to get away from, contact, sacks, etc., make him a little less vulnerable to get hurt than a guy like Jacoby Brissett? If I was Jacoby Brissett after that San Francisco game, I might consider retirement.
Yeah,
that was. I mean, I was painful to watch. Not even the number of times he got sacked, the number of times he took hits just as he released the ball. It was awful.
Yep. I appreciate the idea, a guy that's a little more mobile, maybe, but the other part of that equation is that even nowadays, the defensive tackles are more athletic than half the quarterbacks in the league right now. So you get out of that pocket, you're opening yourself up to some danger too. And it's one of those scenarios where if you can't protect him in the pocket because that offensive line is terrible right now, you roll him out. He's got to make reads in a moving scenario rather than a sitting in the pocket where you can see the field a certain way. When you're running one way or the other, you're losing track of half the field. Most quarterbacks, there's been some great quarterbacks that still see the field real well running, but you're right there. You're cutting down half of his options in that scenario. I want to see him play. Again, I don't subscribe to this idea that if a guy gets punched in the face once or twice, it's the end of his career. I think that eventually they're going to have to give him some playing time. I worry about that offensive line more than anything, and a very average receiving core at best. I'm being nice. Look at me, I'm being nice twice today.
Hard to believe. I'm going to write this down.
No.
October 1st.
Can't we get guests like Deossie more often?
Yeah, that's right.
When you were drafted by the New Jersey Generals, is it the UFL at that time?
USFL.
WFL?
USFL.
USFL.
Yep.
Donald Trump on the team.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so that's my question. Why didn't you go to the Generals?
because I played in the Hula Bowl, the All-Star game out in Hawaii, and Big Reggie White fell on my ankle, and I chipped a bone in my ankle, and they were playing spring ball, so I wouldn't have been available for 6 or 7 weeks, and we just decided that we'd wait for the draft then, because then the draft was only a month after that I might have been able to play. So, but we had good conversations.
Draft slots, though, right?
What's that?
Cost you a couple draft slots. The fact that the Generals drafted you.
It might have. Gil Brandt was a sharp guy. We were talking to Gil Brandt in the second round, and he explained to us that the rest of the league thinks I've already signed with the Generals, with Trump and everything. But I tell you, I was at my buddy Kevin Chapman. We were at a Rangers playoff game, or Rangers hockey game, and they had that VIP section in between the periods. And I went down there, and there was Trump. This is like 2010 or something like that. So you're talking about 26, 27 years after I was drafted. And so Trump's there, and I'm like, I'm waiting for a minute. I'm going to just say hi to him. This is well before he was running for president or anything like this. And finally, he's finished with the people he's talking to and went out, and I go to shake his hand. I said, Mr. Trump, I want to reintroduce myself. He goes, I know who you are. How you doing? Everything, Steve? How's everything? Everything good? Your son's with the Giants now, right? He's doing well. It's good to see. Hey, he had a nice career, Super Bowl, all that stuff. And I'm like, how the hell does somebody remember something like that 24 years later? And I'm sure a few things happened to him even in between there. It's 26 years later, and he's saying something like that. He goes, you'd have been great if you came with us. You'd have been great. I'm like, well, I thought it was pretty great. Or I didn't say that, but he was nice about it. When I told him I was going to wait for the NFL, I told his general manager, and then he called and said, hey, listen, if things don't work out, just let me know, and you'll have a spot here. So it was good. There was an interaction with him that was inconsequential, but it was interesting that someone would remember a very small scenario like that. 30 years later, 26 years later, something like that. It's but yeah, it was that would have been fun though. Playing the USFL was why I talked to a bunch of the guys that were there. That was a fun league. Guys were running around, and the NFL actually adopted some of their rules too. Some of the stuff that they saw that they liked and whatnot, and more importantly, it almost tripled the salaries from the year before I was drafted to the year I got drafted. The USFL tripled the salaries of the NFL. Because the guys there were a bunch of members. It was Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Reggie White, all sorts of guys going over to the USFL, and the NFL finally had to step up. And that
Walker,
Mr. Walker was there too. Yeah, Doug flew. Doug went there, and it was the NFL had a monopoly. They didn't have to pay anybody, and now all of a sudden that the USFL was there and signing some big name stars, the NFL I think my contract was worth 2.5 times what the guy I was drafted like 110th or so. I think the guy that was drafted right around there too, another linebacker. My contract was 2.5 times what his was because of the USFL, and that's one thing that that people don't remember about the USFL, but it caused the NFL to stand up and take notice, and finally things went in a better direction, and now they've gotten even way better. And guys are getting guaranteed money, which is I never thought I'd see the day that you'd have guaranteed money for guys, because it's so easy to get hurt in the game. It's the nature, and now they get guaranteed money and millions of dollars of guaranteed money, which is amazing to me and fantastic for those guys.
My last question, and this is, I'd be mad at myself if I didn't ask this question, because every time I see it, I wonder why the hell is that rule in? It's the kickoff rule this year.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm stupid, but sometimes maybe I am. I don't quite get what the intent of that rule was and what it has solved.
I don't know if it solved anything, I think it's another one of those window dressing things that the NFL does for, they call it player safety. I don't know that they.
If that's the intent, player safety, okay, I can live with that.
No, but you know what? The NFL has hidden behind this player safety idea forever, and they have made the game safer for mostly for quarterbacks and receivers and some other players too. But but it also just happened to coincide with the fact that they wanted to open it up. They wanted to have more points. They wanted big plays. Now I'm an NFL fan. I don't care who plays on Thursday night. I'm going to watch at least half of that game, maybe more, because I'm an NFL fan. They have me. I'm in. But how do you get those casual fans? Points, big plays, big passes, and then we're not really changing the rules. We're just making it safer for everybody. Yeah, and you're opening it up by about 25% in terms of the scoring. So I get it. I don't know how much the NFL really cares about player safety. Probably more now than they did back in the day. But the fact is, they're businessmen. They get it, and most guys that play get it too. The idea that that kickoff, I don't know what. I have no idea what the purpose is there. Although, wasn't there one kick for a return, a kickoff return for a touchdown, like week 2 or something like that, or week 1? I don't know. It looks silly. It looks like you're setting up a chessboard or something, and nothing's going on there.
I'm glad to hear that you don't have any idea, because it's every time you do it. I don't know, Lynch, you've got an idea. Every time I see it, I say, "Why the hell are you doing this again?"
What I can't believe is that somebody brought that idea in front of a committee, and I can't believe there weren't 15 owners that went, "What?
Right?
No, that's not happening." Oh, wow, that's a great idea, Steve. And geez, why don't we have more plays like this? Somebody on the ownership committee, somebody said, "Hey, that's a great idea."
I don't understand how you would describe that in any way. Like, well, first off, it would take a half hour to describe what the hell the rules are about it. No idea. And then the first week they were like highlighting a certain area, a certain 20-yard span of thing. I don't know what that meant. I have no idea what that meant. It was something about if it was
she can't move until the ball crosses the goal line, or you can't move until the ball either hits that. I don't know. Nobody knows.
I found that part out about last week. I didn't realize that either. But it was like they put like a highlight on from the 30 to the 10-yard line, and it was just on TV. It wasn't on the field itself. But they were saying something about that zone, whatever that zone was, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And it was I don't remember who it was talking about. It's one of the color commentator guys that I liked. I don't remember who it was, but and I thought he explained it well. And even afterwards, I was like, I don't get it. It makes. But you know what? I'm wondering. The only thing I can think of is, did it allow the NFL to squeeze one more commercial?
Absolutely. You know what? Not a bad thought.
Right?
Not a bad thought at all. No, you're thinking in the right direction.
Yeah, now it all makes sense.
It makes perfect sense now.
Follow the money.
Right? Why can't we get podcast hosts to ask questions like that? That's what I always thought about. Hey, let me get the spot in. If you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where Lobel and Lynch go. Go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. I was in there last Friday, by the way, for an oil change and a tire rotation. I saw Mike Barnacle was in there while I was.
Wow.
George Gray was there too. Hey, we've been customers for years because we know that George Gray will treat you right. They're family-owned and operated dealership that we trust and you can trust as well. Go see the great George Gray, the big wheel we call him, at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. And I'm sure George can't figure out the dynamic kickoff either because nobody can. All right, Lobie, what else you got?
I'm just happy we got Steve. He did a great job today. Thanks, buddy.
Awesome, Steve. A lot of fun. And so what is your son Zach up to?
He did 6 off seasons with a bunch of off seasons with Goldman Sachs, and then when he finished playing, he went there for 2 years, and then got recruited by I don't know. He explained it to me, but it was like meh, meh, meh. He might as well have been like wah, 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 wah. Some small business hedge funds, whatever, blah blah blah, whatever. All I know is that he went from going into the city 4 days a week to now his office is 2 minutes from his house. So I think it's because now he gets to coach his two sons in every possible sport that they're playing. And I don't know how my son is coaching lacrosse, but he is, and flag football and baseball and all this stuff. So he made a quality of life decision, and now he's loving being with the kids and the wife and working a job that he enjoys. So,
Bob, I saw Zach play a number of times when he was at Phillips Andover, and he was a quarterback, and a very good one, by the way. And on defense, he played middle linebacker.
Yeah.
I don't know one person I've never met in my entire life. I was a quarterback, and if I had to tackle somebody, it would be above the eyebrows. It would never be below the eyebrows. But he was a middle linebacker and a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then he was a long snapper. Then down at Brown, he played all kinds of positions.
He long snap. He was supposed to punt his senior year, but nobody could snap. So as a quarterback, they made him snap.
How valuable was that skill in your career?
It was. I just knew that my dad said volunteer for everything. When I went there, I'm like, okay. And they asked who wants to do this or that. I'm like, yeah, I'll snap, whatever. And then I didn't realize that they were changing. I thought when they asked me if I could block somebody after I snapped, I thought that's how they did in the NFL. I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of your biggest assets. You could snap and block both.
Yeah, but nobody ever did that. I had no idea. But but I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then I'm like, oh shoot, how can I? What am I going to do here? These guys are fast. So, but it was. I never taught my son. I never taught him how to long snap. He just bent over and did it one day, and he's got his own style. And I'll tell him again for the 1,000th time when he wants to learn how to do it right. I'll show him. So, but here's the downside of that, though. All right, they actually bring long snappers to the Pro Bowl now in Hawaii. Well, it was Hawaii. He went to 2 Pro Bowls as a long snapper. That's not right. Granted, they would have had to buy me a house in Hawaii if long snappers went to the Pro Bowl. But my son gets to go to Hawaii. But he didn't take care of my flight there, so we're good. But it's and I love watching his boys play now, and he's more active. I never coached my son. When he asked me questions, I'd answer him, but he's very active. He's very hands-on. I was sitting under a tree on a beach chair, smoking a cigar, watching practice. I
believe it's just not to Steve Deossie, I know.
Yep. That's right.
All right. Some great times. Great job today.
Much appreciated, guys. Love you both. I appreciate that. Anything you need from me, just ask.
Love it. We're playing Granite Links soon. You can count on that.
That works for me.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
All right, take care.
But thank you for watching, folks, and don't forget to follow us at UnAnchoredBoston.com.
Thanks, Lynch.
Right,